Good morning, all. My name is Tyler Suss. I head up our marketing and alliances here at Neudesic. Very excited to bring to you today a great live session on accelerating data and AI strategy in financial services. We've got a great lineup of panelists and content to get through today. So excited to begin. So as mentioned, we've got a really rock star group of speakers today. Our panel kicks off with our keynote from Amir Khan, Senior Azure Data and AI Leader at Microsoft. Great experience in this sector and helping customers really innovate and use multiple solutions on Azure. Michael Cressman also joins us as a great guest speaker, VP of Data Solutions and Delivery at Fulton Bank. He'll be walking us through their modernization story today. So some really great lessons learned in the trenches, and we're excited to have Michael on today. Joe Kastner heads up our data and AI practice on the East. So we're hearing from him today on insights on how organizations can apply data and AI and really accelerate that for business value. And Paul McCullen leads a team of data scientists here at Neudesic as well. So he'll be walking us through a technical demonstration looking at Azure Synapse as well as Power BI and how you can use the technologies to really go through and pull financial insights rapidly. So quickly go over the agenda here. So again, our keynote will kick off today with Amir talking about the future of financial services and looking at how data and AI is really transforming this vertical and use cases. We'll also look at how you can accelerate business value from a modern data platform strategy. Michael will walk us through their data and AI modernization story at Fulton Bank. And then finally, we'll conclude with a live demo of the financial services use case. And then, of course, we'll be taking live Q&A. For those that are just joining in now, again, we'll have this session fully recorded. And any questions that you have during any of these segments, please enter them on the chat and we'll address them at the end of the segment. So to kick us off on today's keynote, I'll be handing it over now to Amir Khan. Amir, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Amir Khan, and I'm a part of the data and AI team here at Microsoft. Today, I have the privilege of opening this discussion between Microsoft, our customer Fulton Bank, and our partner Neudesic. I will start today by outlining a few pressing realities, outlining the importance of data and AI modernization, some of the key initiatives that are driving the future of financial services, touch on what data modernization at a financial institution looks like, and summarizing how Microsoft gets you there before handing it off to Joe Kastner, who is the Director of Technology at Neudesic. And to allay your concerns about this seemingly extensive agenda, I'll do my best to do my part in less than 20 minutes. So as we see on this slide here, let me start by stating some relatively new universal truths that the volume, variety, and velocity of data being generated are all accelerating dramatically. According to some estimates, in 2025, the world's data will climb to 175 zettabytes. This makes the complexity of creating an enterprise knowledge graph seem almost insurmountable. One of the more difficult pillars above is the veracity of data, which includes many factors and is the basis for getting sanitized data for meaningful and transformational analytics. Next slide, please. So here's some the result of a study done by Forbes in 2020, where they were highlighting the future trends for data and AI. If you were to look at the top trends predicted in 2020 for the future, we see that the future of AI is already here. We are increasingly reliant on AI for much needed automation in business processes. Personalization is key to enhance customer experience, and ever more close to being available in real time. Reinforcement learning is a very hot area in machine learning, whereby the initial data set is very small and machine learning takes place in real time. Net is that achieving hyper personalization is a necessary goal, simply to keep up with our customers' expectations. All of this is becoming a reality today using AI and ML technologies. Next slide. So why is that an imperative? Simply speaking, competition and customer satisfaction. Almost all brick and mortar financial services institutions are realizing that there's a need to have at least a hybrid operation to take advantage of cloud scale analytics to stay current and relevant. Because born in the cloud, organizations with lower overheads are multiplying this pressure. And the benefits are too significant to ignore, like depicted here, like 54% growth in revenue and profits, according to this Harvard Business Review study, 62% enhancement to customer satisfaction, and 44% faster time to market. An organization's growth prospects ultimately depend on data at its core. So let's see in the next graphic what some of these CEOs are saying. So the CEO of DBS Bank, Mr. Gupta, says that data was like oil, but now he thinks it's more like air because it is not only necessary, but hard to harness. And that's where your AI and ML comes in, because with all this data change and acceleration, it's very hard to have a sanitized version of data to use. Royal Bank of Canada's CEO, Mr. McKay, says that data is the ultimate battleground. And data scale is really the ultimate goal of talking about data. So what are some of the technology trends driving it? Let's see that in the next graphic. Data and AI is certainly taking the front seat. Responsible AI is no longer a topic of a dissertation, but an imperative for financial institutions. Need for privacy is highly in focus with ransomware attacks and hacks. What are some of the most impactful cases driving this? Customer experience. We now have the power to shape it using digital technologies for financial crime. Same holds true for risk and many other use cases. What is emerging already in 2021 is process automation with AI, and initiatives like automated solutions for Know Your Customer, anti-money laundering, serverless data sharing, and many other cases. So let's get a little bit into digital transformation. Everybody talks about it. So here's a graphic on it. We call this the digital feedback loop, with four most commonly known pillars of digital transformation, that is employees, customers, operations, and products depicted here. As you can see, it is based on data like product telemetry, employee feedback, customer intelligence, and operational data, feeding into a central analytics and AI engine, because again, at the core of this is analytics and use of AI. What it shows is that this is simply not about shuttling data back and forth, but an organization-wide transformation of doing business differently based on an ongoing and real-time feedback based on data. So moving on from this, what would a reimagined financial institution look like with harnessed data and AI capabilities? To put it graphically, we have depicted initiatives and solutions as we walk from left to right in this graphic. The idea here is that the left column depicts the new imperatives for a transformed financial institution, and each row shows solution and steps to getting there. For example, the first row of empowering your employees. As we all remember, and it's ongoing, as lockdowns took hold, moving workers remotely became an imperative and a necessity. Workplace analytics can provide great insights at the individual level and organizational level, or on how employees are collaborating. Empowering relationship management is all about using data and AI to enable services to more clients and making their engagements relevant and personal. Again, that keyword. Managing risk, COVID-19 has had massive macroeconomic impact. It has a stress-tested financial risk models like never before. And banks need to find new ways and to quantify liquidity and explore new ways to model credit risk. And lastly, compliance is, of course, key in financial institutions, and you need to deploy new processes. In COVID-19, for example, we needed new processes for stimulus programs, and many other additional compliance overheads came along with that. Automation and RPA can help here, and it's a huge area of focus in financial institutions looking to drive down costs also. In delivering differentiated customer experience, again, to deliver a personalized experience, digital feedback loops need to be built to track customer telemetry, as we depicted in the last slide also, and deliver recommendations at the right time on the right channel. Again, know your customer involved here. Proactive reach out to customers impacted by COVID-19 was a huge initiative. Identifying customer insights from their transaction history and providing proactive insights or offers to them is key. Contact centers need to be transformed. With virtual work, contact centers were overloaded, and this is a great opportunity to deploy virtual contact centers with power virtual agents and chatbots. Combat financial crime. Again, COVID-19 saw an increased activity in fraud and identity theft. We have solutions like BioCatch, which provide continuous authentication using behavioral biometrics. Longer term, banks are looking to modernize their core systems to provide more resiliency in operations and preserve continuity of services. Moving on from here. So where do all these trends and imperatives that we laid out play in financial services in terms of core business cases? There are at least 3 for modern banking, where mature data and AI posture can offer highly optimized solutions, and those are named here, as you can see. So moving on from here, how do we leverage the power of data and AI? So we've talked about imperatives, and hopefully I have at least briefly demonstrated that data and AI maturity and transformation is an imperative. How do we get there? At a high level, we recognize these initiatives readily, from a reactive action to a proactive action, from siloed view of data to a connected view of data, which leads to from incomplete data to holistic view of data, all through the enterprise, all through the organization. Reporting activity cannot be for the sake of reporting, but it has to deliver business outcomes. So how do we unlock digital innovation, and how do we view it from Microsoft? Where do you start? Of course, with data. The first step is recognizing the verticals and silos that exist today in your organization, quantifying the fragmentation, redundancies, and gaps that exist in your data sets. And that is depicted in the left half above, where there are adjectives like chaos and monolithic data and higher cost and latency and lack of ownership. And we have to move towards the right half by putting processes and solutions in place to get to a state that is organized and usable. That's where you have an enterprise-wide centralized approach for data management with curated access and ownership. These are very key words here. Again, our idea is to have a centralized approach for data management, and we want to limit data access and have a sanitized and trusted data source available, and to be able to then have shared data services on top of that pillar. So how does Microsoft get you there without my hand waving anymore? The next graphic is fairly busy. and I'm not going to drain it, and I'm not going to go over all of the pieces. But the idea here is that Microsoft is uniquely positioned to be your end-to-end partner in this journey. And to highlight our approach here, so I would say that there are three key takeaways that I want to highlight. One would be we are demonstrating that having a centrally governed data source is highly advantageous. So you can better control and curate data and access to it and create ownership for it. You can then have centrally hosted data and AI tools which allow you to bring any compute to the data without moving or duplicating it. And that is at the center of our philosophy here. Number three, you can then employ shared data services and analysis tools on top of that, which could be data services, intelligence services, and experiences leading from that. Microsoft, in contrast to other partial solution providers, enables a common data model, which can be leveraged by all kinds of sources and services, both from within as well as outside of Microsoft offerings. So that's the thing that I wanted to highlight here, that our approach is, first of all, an end-to-end solution. And secondly, having a common shared data source. Moving on to the next slide. How do we practically do it at Microsoft? So this is a depiction of our modern data estate built with Microsoft ecosystem. There are three takeaways here. Number one is openness in sharing services and working with most of the third-party vendors. This is very key here because the data that we keep in the formats that we keep it is open, unlike some other partial solution providers where data is not stored in open formats. Number two, providing a strong security and governance model together with allowing all kinds of data to be ingested seamlessly wherever it is, whether it's on-prem, in a different cloud, in our cloud, into this analytics engine, including unstructured data also. And number three, feeding it into our processing analytics and BI engines, which is really a one piece of solution that is depicted in various pieces. I will not get to talk in a lot of detail about our Synapse Studio, where all of these pieces come together in one place, and you have a single pane of glass for that solution. But I just wanted to allude to that in this picture, while working with third-party services as needed, as shown. I've highlighted the basis for this model, the two circles in the middle. The two central pieces are our data lake and our analytics engine, that is Synapse. We have seen it getting adopted widely within our customer base in the last year and a half, since it has become generally available in the last year and a half. Today, we are talking with one such customer, one I have worked with throughout this journey, that is Fulton Bank. And Mike Cressman from Fulton will be speaking a bit later. And I will leave you with this graphic, with this one final message today, where you can see what the experts think and where Microsoft stands in terms of solution providers. And then I'll pass it on to Joe Kastner from Neudesic. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Amir. Excellent job. And hello, everybody. My name is Joe Kastner. I'm a Director of Technology Services with Neudesic, and I head up our data and AI practice and cloud infrastructure services practice areas. And today I'm going to be focusing a little bit about Neudesic's Azure Data Platform Accelerator and how we enable technical acceleration, business value acceleration, and sustainability and maintainability. So this way, we not only help you get up into the cloud, develop a modern data estate, but also have the ability to maintain and scale the data platform. So before we go into what is exactly our Azure Data Platform Accelerator, I wanted to provide a little bit of context
about how we ended up getting to this place, why we've invested so heavily into building repeatable assets and IP in this space. So Neudesic's journey into a modern data platform started back in around 2017, when at the time it was with Data Lake Analytics, and then over the years, as Databricks came to fruition, we started also investing very heavily into Databricks, and now with Synapse Analytics over the past year, we've been investing pretty heavily in building repeatable assets and IP for solving a lot of these common challenges. So while today's presentation is really focused on financial services, if you look at these challenges, it's really industry agnostic, right? So regardless of the industry that you're in, a lot of folks are, experiencing very similar challenges, be it data quality issues, inability to combine real-time and historical data, no unified analytics platform, siloed data sources, no sandbox environment, really inhibiting innovation, repeated data engineering, inability to operationalize models, right? So this is certainly not an all-inclusive list, but it really highlights a lot of the core challenges that we started solving for in building repeatable assets and IP that can help accelerate the adoption of these type of technologies to solve for these problems. So a little bit about what our data platform accelerator is, three different ways of looking at it. So the first is from a technical acceleration point, it's really a combination of repeatable assets that allow you to deploy a modern data platform up in Azure, integrate multiple data sources, process data, build data models, and then also serve up data for analytics use cases and integrations with applications. So our data platform accelerator is fully automated. So we've invested pretty heavily into automating everything end to end, and we have the ability to actually deploy the entire data platform enterprise grade with all of the required security in just a couple of days of starting an engagement with our clients. We've also invested pretty heavily into developing a metadata-driven approach for ingesting data into the platform and processing the data and transforming the data throughout the environment. So we have full pipeline automation. We have infrastructure as code, both ARM templates and Terraform. And we have templated Spark notebooks and pipelines as well. So everything is fully parameterized and automated, all driven from a central metadata repository. In addition to that, everything is enterprise grade. So we have logging, monitoring, notification capabilities built into the platform and all the pipelines. And as with any company in the modern era, security and compliance is always top of mind. So we have the ability to deploy with private endpoints. We'll work with our clients to build a RBAC model to make sure that we have proper security both on the all the resources as well as all of the data, both in the data lake as well as potentially in a SQL pool or an Azure SQL DB as well. So just to give a quick overview of our Synapse Data Platform Accelerator. So on the top, what you see is pretty much out of the box with Synapse, right? So you have the ability to ingest data using the pipelines, which is called integration in Synapse itself. You have Spark notebooks and Spark pools for processing data. And then you have your dedicated or serverless SQL pools for persisting the data as well. Our typical approach is to use a 4-tier data lake where you ingest data into the raw layer in its native format, and then you process the data throughout the different layers using different formats, mostly Delta format. But what I'd really like to highlight in this slide is actually the second to bottom row where it says the Neudesic Azure Governance and Automation Framework. So as I mentioned before, we've invested pretty heavily in building out this metadata-driven approach. So it's a combination of about 20 to 25 tables and stored procedures, and it allows you to very easily onboard new data sources. So you have the ability to ingest from file-based data sources, SQL-based, as well as API data sources, and it's all it's all configuration driven. So if you want to onboard a new data source, it's a matter of updating these configurations as opposed to having to develop new code requiring more unit testing and integration testing and everything like that. So it really streamlines the delivery and the deployment, as well as the future, ability to onboard new use cases and ingest new data sources. We also leverage logic apps for notifications, so we can send notifications for pipeline successes and failures to either Teams channels or emails or SMS notifications, whatever the requirement is for our clients. And then on the bottom row, you can see the Neudesic DevOps and continuous integration framework. So as I mentioned before, we have several repositories built out with either ARM templates or Terraform files to deploy the environments. We have CI/CD pipelines to operationalize and promote code to higher environments for test and production. And all of this code that we've developed over the past, several years is it's really it's our clients to keep after engagements, right? So this is nothing we don't charge for the code. We don't charge for anything. This is just if you engage with us, this is yours to keep and yours to maintain and continue to scale and grow upon completion of the engagement. So just taking it back down to a more personal level, wanted to highlight a couple of key personas. Certainly not all inclusive of all the folks that interact with a modern data platform. But just to provide some context, so starting off with the data engineer who has a requirement to, build automated pipelines that are scalable and highly performant to meet the SLAs. They need to protect sensitive data, so this way only authorized people are having access to data. And a lot of times what we encounter is organizations moving from on-premise with a purely SQL background to leverage new technologies with Spark, Python, Scala, and such. So understanding what are all the best practices, moving from your standard SQL stack to pipelines and notebooks and things like that. So along the journey, and Mike's going to speak to this too, a lot of what we do is not just accelerate but also enable. So we invest very heavily in our clients and enabling them through knowledge transfer sessions, workshops, documentation, and just making sure that we're passing on all the best practices. This way you have the ability to not only take that data platform, but continue to scale it and start executing on more use cases, right? So for the citizen data practitioner, this is somebody who's, historically not really had access to all the data that they needed, perhaps didn't have access to all the tools that were required, always getting frustrated, trying to, do the right thing, trying to, surface analytics, trying to execute on use cases, but just was not fully enabled, right? So we helped this persona out through our reference architecture and recommended security and data access model. So we'll work with our clients to make sure we set up a access model that's compliant with all of their requirements, but also enabling all of their end users to with the tooling and access the data that's required. And then the third persona is the data steward. So this is somebody that's really focused on, making sure that data is protected, making sure that end users know what data exists. So providing access to data, providing visibility into what data is out there, and also, managing data issues, right? So data quality issues, working to get all that resolved. So Synapse actually integrates beautifully with Azure Purview as a data catalog, where you could create a business glossary. You have your data catalog, the ability to create classifications to classify sensitive data, and then also technical lineage. This way, you could see where the data came from, how it was transformed, end to end, how it actually got all the way to the area where it's persisted in. Some of the benefits, just moving forward, by persona, right? So for the data engineer, when you're engaging with us, we're enabling them. We're providing all of the parameterized pipelines and notebooks, the metadata-driven approach, streamlined automation, also pre-built, mapping and models, and ultimately a highly scalable architecture. Then for the citizen data practitioner, providing that person with access to data, the ability to discover what data exists, and then also the required tooling to to query, analyze, process, and build models against the data as well, right? And lastly, we have the data steward, so the ability to create and provision, end-to-end data lineage, ensuring there's proper data security on all of your sensitive data, anomaly detection for any access to data that were not supposed to happen, and then also automated governance. So again, certainly not all inclusive. There's many different personas that interact with your modern data platform, but we just wanted to provide some context of what we do to help provide some immediate value for some of these core personas. So earlier you heard Amir speak about the common data model. So just another added benefit. So Synapse integrates very nicely with the common data model framework as well. So there's a whole suite of different data models that are or will be coming available that can be leveraged. And this is not only helpful for end users like the citizen data practitioner, but also for streamlined applications, right? So it's a standardized approach to modeling data that allows for streamlined integrations for future applications. Next up, so I also wanted to talk about our design thinking approach. So here's just a couple of quick snapshots of some dashboards. And this is not just for data and AI, but even custom application development. So we typically leverage a agile methodology. So we'll have a scrum master on our projects. And also we've been finding a lot of success with leveraging our designers and our UX teams, right? So working with our clients, understanding the different personas, understanding the pain points and the challenges, and going through the whole journey mapping exercise, we found it very helpful for actually, having the ability to create, reports, dashboards, applications that are meaningful, that are useful, that are actionable, that really help our clients really drive results, which is the ultimate desired outcome. And I believe this is my final slide before I pass it off to Mike Cressman. So just wanted to quickly summarize and highlight, right? So Neudesic over the past about 4 years has really invested significantly in building out repeatable assets and IP that we work with our clients, and we provide this to them to really help accelerate the adoption of these technologies. So as you're going to hear from Mike up next, leveraging all of the tools and technologies and practices and processes that we've developed, it can really help accelerate our clients' adoption and take something that would typically take anywhere from 12 to 18 months and really collapse it down into about 5 to 6 months. Getting into production, operationalizing these types of workloads in a modern data platform. So with that, thank you very much, and I'm actually going to pass it off to Mike Cressman right now.
Hello, everyone. This is Mike Cressman from Fulton Bank. I'm the IT Data Solutions Delivery Manager within the Chief Data Office. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm going to run through kind of our story and how we leveraged Azure and the Neudesic platform to build a successful data pilot. So to give you some insight into Fulton Bank, Fulton Financial was founded in 1982, the holding company, and we are about 26 billion in assets. Fulton Bank itself is actually a little bit older. It's been around for 139 years, and our current presence is within 5 states in the Mid-Atlantic region. We're headquartered in Lancaster, PA, and we have currently about 3,300 employees. So kind of looking into overall, what do we want to achieve within this effort? From the beginning points in time, we really looked at, we did a lot of different research into where do we want to go at the end of the day. And one of the things we really focused on is modernizing our architecture overall. taking our on-premise assets and elevating them to the cloud to really strengthen our overall data capabilities and opening up different doors that aren't available today on-premise. When we looked at overall, we wanted to build and renovate what we had and optimize our solution, really focus on analytics and driving those capabilities, and being able to leverage easy integrations across the board. So we did a lot of research into different cloud products, and we focused on centering on Azure, given the strength of the ability for integration amongst the different Azure product lines. One of the key things here to give you an example from a journey perspective is, if we look at capabilities from on-premise to the cloud, Power BI is a great example. If you have experience with on-premise Power BI, it's a much different environment than the cloud Power BI, whereas in the cloud instance, we can get more rich features in terms of natural language processing, data set rating. So it really piqued our interest to get our assets to the cloud. So from a solution perspective, working with Neudesic and Microsoft, we're able to leverage the product that Joe just basically went over from a modernization perspective and really get a lot of value out of building this platform pretty solidly and pretty quickly. We were able to take our on-current SQL Server solution and move it to Synapse Analytics. We're able to leverage our existing analysis services processes on-prem and lift and shift those to the cloud, as well as migrate Power BI from on-premise to the cloud. And a lot of this has opened up doors to even more further enabling cloud-to-cloud solutions, which is really powerful in being able to drive data in from that perspective. In addition, one of the bigger game changers for us too is introducing CI/CD to the whole process. Working with Joe and team, we're able to build a platform that gives us the ability to do automated deployments right from DevOps. And also, through the experience, it helped to enable us to really redefine how we worked from an agile perspective. Partnering together, really gave us a strong sense of planning and taking things in an iterative approach to deliver within the cloud platform itself. And one of the things that kind of led us here, which I haven't discussed in the prior slide, is we got to this point by going through proof of concepts. And as we went through the journey, bringing Azure on, I think that's one key thing as we go through and test different services, the proof of concept piece of really learning and understanding how things work, which really helped to break down and help us understand what we needed to do to take what we had on premise to the cloud. There's a lot of governance that went into even getting to where we're at today. And part of even our initial phase was getting around how are we going to ensure our security or governance practices, especially being in a regulatory industry. So that helped set the foundation to get us and enable us to roll out the platform that Joe was speaking to. So from a business value approach here, really what this enabled us to do was modernize what we had today on premise. It's going to give us the ability to get to what I like to call speed to consumption. We always talk about speed to market, but one of the biggest things with data, right, is we want to be able to get that data in our users' hands so they can take that, work with that, and be able to help enable insights further, drive analytics from that perspective. Really, also the realization of empowerment from POCs, test and learn, fail fast. Right, we want to be able to try something out real quickly, and if it works, let's move forward and implement. If it doesn't, let's move forward. Let's not be afraid to fail with that. Also, one of the biggest things here too is the streamline of development practice and procedures. The metadata approach that was utilized in this process is a game changer. It helps to get speed to market really, really quickly. We're able to set up one data source, and then as we need to add to those different data sources, it's really cutting down on the time from a developer perspective, which is great because you want to be able to get that data there as quickly as possible. And then from looking back holistically on the project, and if you're thinking about this, and what are some advice points I have for you in terms of getting to the cloud, the key one here really is embracing change. The cloud can be it's a very different aspect from what you do on premise, but it's in a good change, right? It's how do we move forward incrementally to basically enable our modernization of our assets, right? And that's the other key. If you're looking to do this, be incremental. If you try to take on everything at once, it's not going to work. You've got to take small chunks, take it small, be agile with it. Don't be afraid to fail, and really key in on what your learning curves are and plan for that. Everyone's going to have learning curves no matter where you're at in the journey, because technology is always changing. But the more you can do to plan, to educate your team, and help navigate through that change aspect, the better off that you'll be. So that's all I have for my presentation. I'm actually going to turn it over to Paul McMullen to give the demo.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I'm going to be just walking through really the Synapse workspace, which allows me to show kind of the entire platform because everything is kind of integrated in one location. So I'm going to be showing an example of our data platform that we used with Fulton Bank to leverage some of this faster time to market. And yeah, our goal, as mentioned multiple times, is to accelerate the data engineering process so that more time can be spent in BI, ML, and general analytics. And then with this, you can also start to integrate some of those services as well for the more advanced use cases. So I'll be walking through how we use the metadata information to kind of create these reproducible pipelines and resources from an engineering perspective, and then look at a few of the examples of how we can use some of the integrated services to explore and the data, as well as add some levels of security. So here, I'm showing the data set. That's an example of a data set. So one of the things we do is we parameterize these data sets. So we only need one link service, one data set for each source type, and we can parameterize that connection. And since we're pulling that from the metadata database, we can add sources really quickly. When we update a new table, we just have to give the parameters and the information for what that query looks like, what filter criteria we have, what connections are required, and the engineering pipeline is already in place and can be added to an execution plan. So this, it's just one parameter here. You do have flexibility. At times, maybe we prefer to have the user and password kind of managed separately, and so in that case, you can split it out differently. If I show quickly what that looks like on the link service side, you see that the secret name is being used for the connection string. So this example for SQL Server is the entire connection string that's in Key Vault. You can do the same thing. This allows us to keep a single parameter in the database, but it has the flexibility to add any number of parameters, so that a strategy can be changed and different resources might require different numbers. So once we have kind of our pipelines, actually, let me jump to where that's used. So this is the example of a copy activity pipeline. So this is a file source, and this file source pipeline can be used for any file source, just like the SQL Server data set that I demonstrated. So in this, this default pipeline that's reused incorporates logging and logging of success and failure, as well as metrics for our consumption rate. So how much data was moved, how many rows were moved, were any rows skipped, all that is logged. So we have that kind of pre-built as a template into all of our pipelines. And then we also incorporate the notification. So this goes back to the enterprise grade. We're ready to deploy a service that can be maintained. And these webhooks are email or Teams notifications to update users. The two that you see here are for success, but we have similar in these failure pipelines that are called, we have similar notifications that can be sent for the failures. And so sometimes these are the only ones that are required depending on the organizational needs. If I go back to kind of more high level, so this is an example of our kind of general master execution pipeline. So we have each of these tiles for the execute, ingestion, and transformation can be related to kind of different data lake layers. So like a bronze, silver, and a gold, or whatever layers you choose. And within this, there's an execution that loops through all of the copy activities, all of the notebooks, or all of the stored procedures that are required. So I'll show an example of what that looks like for copy activities and notebooks. I just want to highlight though that when this executes ingestion, currently in this example, it's going to copy activities. So this copy activity loop pipeline and this file system can execute anywhere from one file migration to 1,000 or beyond. So there's not, these two pipelines don't need to be reproduced to add new sources. So that's essentially the reduction in engineering that we're going for here. And the way that that's handled is the lookups to the metadata database. We have this kind of parent pipeline, the loop copy activity, which looks up our execution plan. So I can show an example of that. This execution plan that I'm showing only has one migration, but you would see just multiple records that look the same as this. And this is the high level details. So what is the unique identifier for my data source? So that's the sync name, the container. So that kind of orchestrates, you can think of that as like a project. Any data that's tied together for a use case or a project or has any dependencies is going to be part of the same container, which allows kind of multiple levels of parallel processing while allowing sequential processing where needed. And we also include the data location. So where's that data? Where do we want to drop that data once we get it? And then what type of copy activity it is. So this is used to tell me which, as I mentioned, we have one activity per source type. So this is used to tell me which copy activity to go to. And if I show this over here, we have kind of unique, I'm demoing the file system, but we have a unique pipeline for MySQL, for Oracle, for SQL Server, and we can have it for ADLS and other sources as well. Anything that there's a link service connection provided, we can just create a common pipeline for that. Once we're inside the loop, I'll go back to this. We have another lookup. So beyond the logging, so the logging of the start and finish is included everywhere, but beyond the logging, we have another lookup that gives us the rest of our connection details. So this is for the item that I'm moving over, for the execution that I need. What are the rest of the connection details? And let me go back and copy that. So I don't have that should have been in here, but the details that are included here are the file extension type, the name of the file that we're looking for, the string or the connection string for the link service for that file system on premise. Or if you have a SQL source, it's going to be your the key vault secret for your connection string once again, and then also the query that you want to use to ingest the data lake location that it's going to go to. All of those kind of custom features for this copy activity are found in this lookup. And then, yeah, the rest is all logging and notification that's maintained in all these pipelines. I'll quickly show very similar architecture. Show what we're doing for notebooks. It looks essentially the same. We have an execution plan. So this one. So basically, we get a unique execution plan for each execution group, which is another kind of level beyond the container. So within the container, we might have different sub-execution groups we want for different dependencies, and that's where you get a unique execution plan for each one. And this one tells us this is a unique identifier for the notebook, which is essentially a combination of our notebook plus the input parameters. And then the name of the notebook, the physical name of the notebook that we're going to be executing. Inside this, hopefully I can get some examples of what this lookup for the parameters is here. Yeah, this one's populated. So these details are going to be everything that's passed to the notebook. So we have a parameterized notebook that makes it so similar to these pipelines, we don't need to rewrite notebooks for every different type of processing that we're doing. The standard notebooks that we have are especially for an early level like a bronze or silver, we might have a merge notebook, an overwrite notebook, a append notebook, and like for Fulton, we primarily are using an SCD type 2 notebook. So all of our parameters tell us what table we're using, the primary keys, what are the, what are some of the aspects. So also where we're pulling the data from, where our synced data set is, all those details are in these parameters. And this kind of hash map is parsed within the notebook to get all these details. So we have our query zone table name. We have our schema name. So this is for a Delta Lake with a SQL or a Spark table, this is going to be the database you use. It can also be the schema that you use in a Synapse database as well, in a SQL pool. So this is because we have these parameterized notebooks using that toggle that's built into the Synapse notebooks. And so now I want to highlight, this is an example of how all these pipelines are completely reusable. So we can add data sources quickly. Once we have the data, we can use some of the integrated services to apply some useful security measures for financial services, like dynamic data masking and row level security. So I can run through and execute some of these. So this is before anything's applied, an example of the data set that we're using. This is a World Bank data set for credits and grants. So right now nothing is masked this is the dynamic masking. So nothing's masked, you can see everything. We can check what dynamic data masking policies are in place. There aren't any. We have a set of 3 that we've put in place here for credits, distributed amount, and borrower. So if I run those, we can check again to see what's in place. So we see all 3 of those have been added. And now, if we first we got to create the user and apply this to the user. And if we query this data set with this user, we see that the data is now masked. So this is obviously going to be super useful for any PII information, so the credit cards or any user-specific information. You can grant them unmask. So you can, if you unmask, they have the ability to query it and see it, and then you can toggle that back whenever you want. So we just revert it back, and if I query again with this user, it's masked again. So let me just clean this up. And then I'll go to the other example, which is the row level security. So this is going to be a similar process. I'll first show, what this data looks like. There's no security, so we're applying users based on region eventually. So I just want to first show that, you can see that there are many regions, and there's not, they're all included here. We're seeing everything. And then we can create the user and grant them select permissions. And next is where we actually create the security predicate policy and the function, and then apply the policy. So after executing that, I can execute with different users, and we can see that the row level security is dependent on user because of the way we created it. So the users are related to regions, so each region has a user, and then there's also this head of financial intelligence who is going to have access to the whole data set. So here, if we query with the South Asia user, we don't see, that's all the data we see. Same applies for Latin American Caribbean user. And then if we now run it with the head of financial intelligence, we can see that multiple regions are visible. So we have Africa, Africa East, the West. So all of these are visible for this user. And you can apply that to any number of users you need, and that way you don't have to have custom queries or anything like that. This dynamically secures those rows and shows the user what is relevant to them. The last thing I wanted to show is another integration service within Synapse, which allows us to integrate our Power BI dashboards. So we've created a dashboard for this data set and for this pipeline, and we can do it and edit it directly in Synapse here. So this is going to be super useful for visualizing the output of your models. If you integrate an ML model into a pipeline or anything, you can see what the input or what the output looks like in the dashboard that the end user is going to see, as well as use it for some data exploration. And we can integrate a lot of the services for NLP, for instance. So this is just a more free-form request that you can make. So if we use one of their suggestions, so if we want the canceled amounts by country, we can search for that, and it gives us, it generates a visualization automatically. So this allows us a lot of flexibility to give the user, what they want, when they want it, without having to make large redesigns for the dashboard. We also have some visualizations for like year to date or year over year credits, so how things changed, and then obviously you can customize this however you want. We generally keep the KPIs at the top, so you have a quick visualization of what's relevant. What do I, if I'm an end user, what I'm paying attention to, I can find it quickly. And then you have your deep dive area down below, so you can start looking at, use a lot of these features to look at different aspects of the data and dive through it with all these visualizations and everything. Another piece that we don't have an example of, but the Azure ML integrates very easily as well. So once we have models and use cases in place, you can directly run those pipelines for batch inference within any of your engineering pipelines. So we don't have to leave this space to start leveraging those ML models there. We can use them particularly for batch inference and then visualize those in a dashboard here. So that's it for the demo. I think I'm a little over, but still should be time for any questions. So Tyler, do you want to take it back?
Great, thank you, Paul. As we've seen today, we've explored the Synapse Data Platform Accelerator. We've looked at a number of different ways that we can help automate that deployment. Wanted to share with everyone on the call that we do have offers no matter where you're at in your journey, right? And we've teamed up with Microsoft to make these available to our customers, providing different types of help from both expertise to funding to, again, kind of templated frameworks and strategy. So starting on the left, if you're at a place where you're really kind of looking at moving from legacy on-prem to Azure and to a more modern data platform, we've got a number of workshops. We even have a migration assessment from Hadoop. So when we look at our offers there, everything from data strategy, Hadoop migration assessment, and as well as cloud workshop as well. When we move over to really accelerating data into more modern platform, we teamed up with Microsoft for the Data Platform in 30 Days program. So there we're looking to really help accelerate that data modernization platform. It includes everything from data platform design, data acquisition, data models and visualizations. We're going to work with you to help identify use case as well as a roadmap for future use cases. So that again is our DPI 30 or data platform in 30 days. And then once we look at the next stage of deployment, we've seen today through our Synapse Accelerator how we're able to help automate that deployment in less than 4 weeks as well. And then continuing on with our governed innovation platform to help you prove out additional use cases and increase innovation at scale. So again, these are our offers that we've worked with a number of clients on, again, no matter where you're at in your journey, and love to work with you as well. So now I believe we've got a few minutes left for Q&A. We did get a few questions over the course of the presentation, but if anyone else has any questions, please again insert that in the chat and we will help answer those. So the first question looks like we got, and I'll give this to Joe or Paul. What is the typical deployment time for your Synapse platform?
Sure, Tyler, I could take that. So it really it depends on the scale of what we're looking to accomplish. So if we're just trying to deploy the platform in a lightweight MVP versus a full operational deployment with 3 environments with private endpoints and lockdown security. So it really varies, but I would say that based on all of the code that we have already developed, we should have the ability to at least deploy and configure the environments in typically in the first week or so of an engagement. We would most likely send over typically I should say a prerequisite list of all of your naming tagging conventions, things like that, and then get all those in place. This way we can just change the configurations and deploy the environments. But depending on the level of complexity of the use cases, getting to production could really vary from anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months.
Great, thank you, Joe. I'll leave this up to the panel, and Amir, I know you touched a bit on this as well on a few of your slides. Broad question, what are some of the applications of how artificial intelligence is being used across different aspects of financial services?
Right. So I guess the keyword there is personalization when it comes to customers, and the keyword for bank operations or a financial service institution operations is modernization. So as we talked about, the customer-centric cases would be KYC initiatives like Know Your Customer, personalized marketing recommendations, proactive approaches. And from a bank and security and compliance point of view, that would be more like anti-money laundering, fraud detection, audit and compliance help with automation, with RPA products like that. Some of the key cases, business cases for banks that is driving them to modernization, including contact center modernization and chatbots included with that.
Excellent. So I believe we've got we've run a little bit over time here, all. So much appreciated that you've all stuck around and we've gone through today's session. So we'll follow up with any questions that we weren't able to get to. Much appreciated again from our panel for your great insights and presentations today. And again, thank you all for joining us this morning and afternoon and going through these insights. So much appreciated all. Thank you again. We'll share out the recording as well.